Hi, my name is Joel with 1001words.com, and today I'd like to talk to you about critical thinking in today's mass communication environment. And what I'm presenting to you today is a guide to avoiding trolls, misinformation, and disinformation. I'm a former troll. I had a lot of fun for quite a few years, just trolling people in social media and on different platforms. But I'm also a retired U.S. Navy Senior Chief Mass Communication Specialist. And my last tour in the Navy, I taught behavioral studies and critical thinking. And I felt that based on my past experience, my background, there's a certain value that I can bring to today's information environment. And so hopefully you find what I'm doing today to be helpful. And we'll go ahead and get started. The topics I'm going to cover today are trolling, two types of trolls, misinformation, disinformation, applied critical thinking, and how to do some basic research. So what is trolling? Well, in my own words and from my own experience, trolling is influencing or controlling discussion, behaviors, and actions for either entertainment or as a weaponized means to sow public discourse. And there's only two types of trolls, as far as I'm concerned. You have the self-entertained troll and you have the politically motivated troll. And both of these cause differing degrees of panic, interest, heightened emotions, curiosity, or chaos. And as far as the self-entertained troll, these are the trolls that are in the different social media platforms causing arguments and making people angry. Some examples are up there. But they also can cause physical problems for people. And so when you look at the cell phone charging in the microwave that actually went viral and people were really destroying their phones, or people believing that you can inject bleach and kill viruses, those are the kind of things that can actually be harmful and are also found to be self-entertaining by some trolls. So you have to be careful. This is one of the last trolls that I performed. And this was about 3 years ago. I took a picture of a sailboat while I was stationed on a Navy base. And the angle that I was sitting from my office, the sailboat looked like the end of a jet. So I posted to Facebook and said, hey, look, a jet just crashed in the bay across from my building. This wasn't a public post. And that was on purpose because I didn't want to generate public, I didn't want to create a bunch of public interest in what I was posting because I knew what I was doing had potential to really rattle some people. So I actually had to own up that it was a troll within 20 minutes because people were actually calling news organizations. People were driving past my window, trying to find the crashed jet. All I had to do was put some hashtags on this and some at CNN, at Fox News, and I could have caused quite a stir. So your audience does play a big role in who's getting trolled. Now, this is just one small example. Because then you also have, as I mentioned before, you have the 4chan entertainment. And the way 4chan works is that you find an image, you write about that image because it's a board meant for text and an image. And so once 4chan finds an image and a text that actually can go viral, they'll make it go viral. And this one with the Wave cell phone went viral a few years ago. It was shared to Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and it talked about this great thing with the new phone called the Wave. It's an exclusive issue with the iPhone 8. They also did this with the iPhone 6. And it said, hey, put it in the microwave. You can charge your phone within a few seconds. And people were blowing up their phones and blowing up their microwaves. And people found a lot of entertainment in this on the 4chan website. And it's at the expense of other people because it damages their personal goods. But also to a troll, what's important is damaging someone's self-esteem. So it's the emotional damage that also trolls enjoy finding. And that's still not as bad as the politically or economically motivated troll. And these are the ones that are actually paid by their government to sow discourse within entire countries. So you have domestic or foreign groups that cause entire movements over major issues for political gain. So you can actually have trolls that stage protests. They propagate through all these, through Twitter and through Facebook, through bots, or automated accounts that sit there and generate the same information over and over and over again throughout all of social media. And once they do that, they're able to discredit other credible sources. And then you also have videos like the pandemic, which I use as an example here. So you have pandemic. Now this isn't so much a propagated troll. This is a viral video that plays into public fears and creates distrust of credible sources. And so what I've included here is a link to a ProPublica article written by Marshall Allen, who investigated the video and really does a great job of explaining why pandemic is not a good source of information. So I ask that you please click on this link, go visit the ProPublica.org article, and see for yourself about why pandemic is not a good video to follow for information. Part of the reason that I actually created this entire presentation today was because of the pandemic video. It's important to understand that misinformation is really damaging the credibility of legitimate organizations. And when you have something that propagates misleading information to persuade public opinion toward ideals that they would not even normally support. So you actually have, aside from pandemic and aside from these other movements, you actually have, and this was proven by the Mueller report and by the Senate Intelligence Committee, that you actually had Russian agents over here that were able to convince American citizens that becoming Russian was better than becoming part of the Democratic Party. So you actually have trolls that were able to convince American citizens that the Russian government is a better organization than another U.S. political entity. And it's the same thing that happened with Brexit. The same trolls, the same cookie cutter pattern of information flow led to Brexit. So you actually have these other foreign nations that are paying these trolls to influence citizens within another country to break away from their own country. That's how serious this is. And so hopefully by the time we walk away from this presentation today, people really fully understand the gravity of what trolls can really do in a society and why I stopped being one. Another example that I have here is miners for Trump. And again, this was proven not only by the Mueller report, this was proven by the Senate Intelligence Committee. This was a nonpartisan group of individuals who sat down and studied this stuff and came up with these examples themselves. These aren't mine. I'm not saying this out of opinion. These are fact-based. So you had miners for Trump, which was a Russian troll farm campaign. And what they did was they made it seem like coal was a valuable energy resource still. And they wanted to bring coal back online for all these plants that have been shut down for reasons because they were poisoning our water and they're poisoning our air and they're poisoning our entire environment. There's a reason these coal mines were shut down. But they became part of a presidential election platform because of the trolls. They made it sound like coal was a very valuable resource to have and that we need to bring these back online economically. But what we're learning now through the current pandemic is that coal is not a required energy resource. And what we're discovering is that now green energy is dwarfing coal as a resource. And this clean energy is much better for the environment than coal. It's not poisoning our water supply. It's not poisoning our air. It's not destroying our environment and causing sickness within the populations located near the mines. And I ask also that you visit this website, iea.org, to learn more about green energy and coal. Because again, it's the trolls that are winning the war here. It's not their legitimate news sources. And I ask that we do our best to try to change our own minds here and how we absorb and collect and go through the information that we're given every single day. So misinformation. This is when you twist reality to influence public opinion. So misinformation happens through creative editing, it happens through misquoting, and it happens through missing context. And again, I'll use the pandemic video as a primary example here because all of those are involved here. Not so much the creative editing, but certainly the missing context and the misquoting of information. Creative editing is what we see when you have a soundbite and it's spliced with a different soundbite, but it gives a continuity to make it sound like it's actually real when it wasn't. And the problem with misinformation is it's actually used by legitimate organizations as well as trolls. So it's really important to do your research, especially when you see video that you know was spliced, it's best to go back and try to find the entire soundbite so that you can go and legitimately figure out what was really said. And the common types of misinformation are opinion, analysis, and editorials. And I lumped all those together for a reason, because those are primarily what you see people sharing the most on social media, are things that are generated through opinion, analysis, or editorials. And they're being shared as actual news, and they're not. Everyone has an opinion. And everyone's opinion is formed in one way or another by the information that they absorbed. So they've absorbed information that isn't accurate, and that's how they form their opinion. And then they share that opinion, and you might agree with that opinion, so you share it. What you're sharing is an opinion that was formed on misinformation. So you're basically sharing misinformation. So it's important to go back and understand how that writer's opinion was actually formed. And I'm asking you to do a lot of research here. And at the end of this, hopefully what I've done is generated some interest in wanting to do research into the information that you see today, because it's incredibly important that we all do our part to make sure that we're sharing correct, factual information. It's going to keep us from killing each other at some point. Other forms of misinformation are paid advertisements masquerading as news stories. So you have advertorials, which I didn't make up, it's an actual word. And those are paid advertisements that sound like editorials. So you have these people that belong to, let's say, pharmaceutical companies who are there talking about these great advances they have in this one medication. Well, that one medication is actually the whole point of providing this information is that the person who's providing that information is getting paid by the pharmacy company. So you have a pharmaceutical company paying a person who's giving an editorial about a certain medication, which is really just a paid advertisement. And that medication really may or may not do what it's saying that it does, because the pharmaceutical company is the one who wants to make the money on it. You have to be really careful. This is how something like that malaria drug was getting a big boost in the press, was because people were advertising for it on behalf of the company. And then you have native advertising. In native advertising, let's say you own a travel website and you have links to other travel websites on your travel website. And those native advertising sites have, let's say, travel packages that tie directly back into your own site. So basically what you've done is you've allowed other entities to advertise on your site that brings them to advertising that brings them right back into your site. And that's how native advertising works. But then you also have sponsored content. And this is outside of that native advertising. Sponsored content, and I use the example later on in this presentation. I actually used an Atlantic.com site, because it's a really great example to use here. Atlantic.com is a relatively credible news source. I mean, they do a good job. They do have a lot of opinion, and you have to dig through that a little bit. But generally speaking, it's still a relatively very honest website, credible news source to use. But they have used sponsored content in the past because they have to be able to pay for their website. So what they'll do is that they'll accept an advertisement from the example that I'm using here, and I'm not making this up, is the Church of Scientology. So they'll sell advertising space to the Church of Scientology in that sponsored content. And that sponsored content generates information flow and money going back to the Church of Scientology, who then pays for the advertising to the Atlantic. And I will tell you that using something like the Church of Scientology as a sponsored content can certainly take away the credibility of your own publication. So if I was the owner of Atlantic.com, I would probably rethink wanting to use the Church of Scientology as sponsored content, because it could detract from the credibility that my organization has. But if I'm starving and I need money, that's who I'm going to go to. So that's how that works. And the same thing with BuzzFeed and all these other content generators that use like the top 10 lists and five things to know about this. There's 10 facts. There's a reason that they do that, and that's to generate money. They have to have income, and not everyone wants to sit there and read boring news all day. So then they have all these other things that generate interest and keep the flow of customers coming to their website. So they could be a legitimate news source. They just do these ridiculous things on the side, but it generates money. Some of the other things that misinformation has are supercuts, which are the video montages of someone making themselves look like an idiot throughout the entire chop. And those are usually just spliced together. and they're not always accurate. In fact, they're almost never accurate because they're out of context. They're supercuts for a reason. They stop when the information fits what they're trying to get across. Unfortunately, in our current environment, press conferences are also a form of misinformation, and you have to be readily available to fact check our own press conferences coming from our own federal agencies in our own government, which is unfortunate, but it gets you in good practice of validating information and doing some good research. Talk shows. Now, personally, I don't watch any cable news. I don't watch talk shows, and here's why. They're all paid. They're all paid guests. They're all paid interviews. Everybody's paid on TV. And so again, when you follow the money back to the organizations that are paying the people to give the information, not all of that information may even be information they actually believe in. It's just that's who's paying them to say what they're saying. And I can say right now that, hey, no one's paying me to do this today. I'm doing this as a service to you. And if there's enough interest in what I'm doing here that someone wants to pay me for what I do, that would be amazing. So keep me in mind. That'd be pretty cool. The last thing I'm going to talk about is memes. Memes are terrible. Please never trust a meme. If I could have that on a t-shirt instead of Wicked Smart, I would have never trust a meme. I am anti-meme for lots of reasons, but primarily because almost none of them are ever accurate. So I ask people to go back and verify the information, please, on your own. Go find credible news sources. The bottom line here is that generally all content is paid for in terms of misinformation. The guests are paid. The word sponsored appears at the top of some of the articles that are sent out. You have sites that are linked to shopping to associate with the content. Information is paid. Misinformation is paid for. So when it comes to trying to investigate misinformation, you have to do your own research. Who wrote the article? Where is the information coming from? Is it coming from a politician? Is it coming from the head of an agency? And that agency is trying to put their agency in the best light possible, so they're going to give you the information that makes their agency look like they're doing the best job possible. And they may be, but they also may not be, and that's up for us to try to decide and dig a little bit deeper and try to figure it out. Is it an advertising firm? Was there a PR firm hired to generate articles on behalf of this agency or on behalf of a company that we're actually reading about? Because it's going to not have complete information more than likely. And it's going to be time to go back and we're going to have to do our own research and figure out what's what. Was it a drug company representative that wrote the article? And I'm saying this because almost every single time we pick up something to read or to look at, it's all advertised. Every time we go onto social media, there's always sponsored content. Every time that we're walking around town when we're allowed to, with or without masks, everything is an advertisement. Everybody's out for money. So what's real and what's not? The general rule here is that no print or broadcast media will give bad coverage about a sponsor or sponsored product. So it's up to us to figure out what information is missing. And then we get hit with disinformation. This is false or fabricated information. And the very first thing I'll throw up there is memes. They're almost constant flow. A meme is disinformation. I never trust any meme ever sent anywhere. YouTube channels like this one. And again, if I was getting paid to put this content on YouTube, I wouldn't trust it. But I'm not getting paid to do this. And disinformation, again, is used by legitimate news sources. Although it's rare, it does happen. I can go all the way back to the 1980s, I think, where one of the major networks, and I don't remember who it was, but one of the major networks blew up a car to show how unsafe it was. But they literally blew up the car themselves to show how unsafe the vehicle was. And they were caught. But again, that was a form of disinformation, and it had to be exposed. I don't remember how that was exposed, but it's up to the public most often than not to blow the whistle and be like, hey, that's not correct. Although it probably was the car manufacturer that did the research and proved them wrong on that one. Trolls on social media message boards, constant flow of disinformation. I don't trust any of them. And then you have extremists who are out there and they're paid on behalf of their government to disinform us. And that's part of information warfare, and that's a constant battle um, every minute of every day. So here's what I'm providing you. There's a great website for all the different types of disinformation tactics that are applied specifically in this instance by the Russian government. So if you go to cepa.org, it'll walk you through all the disinformation techniques that Russia uses against us every single day. And hopefully it helps you open your mind to the information that you've seen, the information that you've read, and helps you kind of understand exactly what you were reading and what you've been told. And hopefully it gets you to question that, because that's really the whole point of what I'm trying to do today, is get you to question information that you've seen or propagated yourself, and understand that people like me in the past who was a troll, that's what we want you to do. So it's time to stop it. And in order to do that, you have to apply critical thinking. Everyone is biased. Bias is inherent. So how can I change my way of thinking? The only way to change your way of thinking is to think about how you think. There is no other way to do it. So to understand your own internal thought process as to why you think the way you think about certain things, whether that's based on race or sex or any type of human behavior or human anatomy, whatever. You have to learn to play devil's advocate with your own thought process. Why do I think the way that I think about that person or about that situation? How can I think differently about that? And if we're not able to do that, then we're not able to grow from where we are. And we're going to constantly seek information that helps feed the way that we lazily think, and that we're not putting any energy into how we think and why we think differently, or how we're going to get to a different way of thinking. Can I change your way of thinking? No. But here's what I can do. I can explain to you how I was able to change my way of thinking, and to understand that some of the thinking that I had in the past was incorrect, and how I was able to realize that and grow from it. And that takes a sense of humility, and that's something that many people willingly lack. So I'm going to ask people to try to get to a point where you do question what it is that you think. Go back and try to understand why you think the way that you think. And I'm not going to ask you to try to change other people's minds, because you're not. And I may not be able to get you to even think about how you think. But hopefully with the information I presented today, I've actually planted that seed to where you can. Is the information that we are receiving slanted toward one viewpoint? Is it slanted because it's advertising? Again, who wrote the information that we're getting? What does the author gain from presenting this information? What am I gaining from this video today? Hopefully I am gaining a society that thinks before it just believes everything that it reads. And hopefully I'm helping a society get past what they see on cable television that they take to heart every single day and think that that's reality when it's not. And so I'm asking my society to think differently and to start doing its own research so that we can get out of where we're at, because right now is a really bad time. We need to start really thinking differently here in our society. So work with me today, please. Can you verify where the information came from? If you can verify the meme, which is unlikely, but if you can actually verify the information in a meme, don't share the meme. Share the source for that information. Share the actual information. That way, you're not just sharing some cartoonish piece of crap picture that may or may not be authenticated. If you're actually sending the source material to people, they're getting the real information, and much more in depth than what you're going to get with just a meme. We need to get away from just being a meme society, because it's destroying us. And if you can't verify a meme, don't share it. Ignore it. delete it. Tell people right back to the person who posted it and be like, this is a bunch of crap. That's what I do. And whether or not they believe me or not, I don't care. But at least I pointed out the fact that, hey, this isn't true. If they're still my friend, then I didn't lose anything. If I lose a friend because I told them they shared a meme that was a bunch of crap, then they weren't my friend to begin with. And is it worth engaging? If it comes down to it, is it worth losing that person as a friend? It depends on the information. I won't tolerate racism. There's certain things I will not tolerate. So if I can't engage you intellectually, or feel that I'm not going to make a dent in how you view other people or value other lives, chances are I'm just going to go ahead and avoid the conversation entirely and probably not engage you ever again. Which is also something I think we need to do a better job of as a society. I really do. How to research. I call it the 3 V's. Every single time you open an article, see something on TV, look at a meme, look at a social media post, verify the headline, verify the author, verify the information. Is the headline accurate? Well, I don't know. Let me look at the information. Okay, the headline matches the information. Now let's take a look at the author. Is the author a journalist whose only goal is probably to get real information out there? Chances are the information is accurate. Because here's the thing about journalists: people call it fake news all day long, but when you have an AP journalist out there writing a story, pretty much their only goal is to become a famous journalist, and they're not going to get there by making stuff up. And if they do, they're usually caught. There have been Pulitzer Prize winning journalists who have been caught for lying, and that'll constantly, the getting caught part will constantly happen. So I ask that you keep an open mind about the information that you're getting, but generally speaking, legitimate news sources like AP, Reuters, are always going to be credible sources, with very few exceptions. And if the author is not a journalist, and you discover the author is a paid spokesperson for a company, or oftentimes when we see social media posts that are generated from certain fringe websites, the people that are writing the articles actually own the website. It's their website. So when they're sending the information out, they're actually just propagating their own information. They're propagating their own personality out there, and they're trying to get you to follow them. It's like that type of journalism is basically like Instagram journalism. They create content just to make sure that you're following them, so that you're generating ad content for them, and that's something to really think about and avoid. So compare the coverage. Is the story or information the same on the right or left outlets? So if you look at a headline, is it the same headline that's going on the right as it is on the left? And is it the same as the center? Because if it is, then most likely it's a true headline. That's actually really going on. All right. If it's one way on the left and one way on the right, chances are something is definitely wrong with how the information was presented. It needs to be researched. So what I'm going to ask you to do is not just stick to one organization and get your information solely from one organization. You have to be able to compare that information to another organization to see what the discrepancy is, or see if the information is the same. Because that's the only way you're ever going to find out if anything's true. Can it be found on a credible government website? If so, it is most likely true. And I have an example that I'll bring up on the next slide. But generally speaking, if the information that you found is on a credible government website, it's actually credible information. But lastly, can more information be found with additional research? If it can, most likely it's true. If not, then chances are what you've discovered is false information that was presented with only one side, and there's nothing else to back it up. So if you can find additional research, find more information about that topic, chances are it's true information. But getting back to that credible government website, as a caveat, right? Sites like education.gov, ed.gov may have misleading information that needs to be verified. And I say that, I'm not saying anything bad about the agency head for the education department. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that the information that is on that website are press releases that place the agency in a positive light. And so they're going to have, if you want to call it a spin, that's totally cool because that's what it is. They're going to put a spin on the information to make the agency look the best possible. So when you see a headline that says Secretary DeVos takes historic action to strengthen Title IX for all students, that may or may not be true. The only way you're ever going to find out is to read Title IX. And it's a big document. And so I haven't even verified that headline. I haven't verified whether or not it strengthens protections for all students or not. What I do know is that I've seen headlines that say it's given protections to coaches and teachers who've witnessed sexual assault, which I can't verify yet either because, again, I have not read Title IX. But that's another great example of it's time to actually do the research. Are there protections for people so they don't have to report sexual assaults they've witnessed? If that's the case, I'll leave my opinion out of it. But let me just say that that it's worth verifying the information to make sure that's actually true or not. And I thank you for taking the time with me today to go through this presentation. Again, I created a website called 1001words.com. I may have started it out as a pseudo business just to keep me busy and occupied. But what I've decided to do with this is actually use it to generate content that I think is important for society. So thanks for hanging out with me today and going through this presentation, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks.